Hello. General Hospital will reveal exciting plot for the next 2 weeks from March 24th to April 4th, 2025. First, at the PCPD, Valentin arrived with a guarded expression, carrying a sealed file that he refused to let out of his sight. His meeting with Alexis took place behind closed doors, where he carefully laid out his request. Although he didn't say it outright, Alexis could sense that this matter involved Charlotte, either directly or indirectly. The documents Valentin presented hinted at a legal issue with potentially damaging consequences, something that could disrupt his already fragile relationship with his daughter. Alexis, with her sharp legal instincts, began to understand the deeper implications. Valentin wasn't just seeking advice, he was asking her to help him bury a secret before it came to light, one that could shatter everything he tried to protect. Elsewhere, at Drew's house, Nina found herself in the center of a storm after Drew discovered her snooping through his private safe. His reaction was fierce and immediate, laced with anger and betrayal. Nina stood her ground, but before she could explain, Willow arrived and added fuel to the fire. The betrayal stung even more coming from her mother, and the confrontation quickly escalated. However, beneath the surface of the emotional clash, Nina had already unearthed something troubling, medical records and confidential information that suggested Drew had been manipulating his connection with Portia. This wasn't just about broken trust, it was about a deeper scheme that Drew had carefully hidden, and Nina now held a key piece of it. In the days that followed, Nina quietly sought out Portia, and the two women began exchanging information behind closed doors. Portia, already suspicious, had been reviewing Drew's medical history under the guise of professional concern, but what she found confirmed Nina's doubts. Together, they began constructing a quiet alliance, bound by a shared desire to expose Drew's deceit. While Portia's motives were driven by ethics and perhaps a sense of betrayal, Nina's were more complicated, rooted in redemption, revenge, and a desperate need to reclaim some control. Their plan unfolded slowly and strategically, with Portia's medical insight providing the leverage Nina needed. As they moved forward, the power dynamic began to shift, and Drew, once confident in his secrets, was now walking dangerously close to exposure. Second, Jason had always been protective of Carly, but this time, his concern turned into confrontation as he tried to push her away from Jack Brennan. Despite his warnings, Carly remained steadfast in her feelings, unwilling to abandon the connection she had formed. Brennan had become more than just a fleeting presence in her life, he represented a chance at something different, something deeper. Jason's pleas fell on deaf ears as Carly refused to let her past dictate her future. The tension between them grew, but Carly, with a quiet resolve, made it clear she would not be swayed by anyone, not even someone as significant to her as Jason. In quiet moments away from the chaos, Carly and Brennan began to discuss the uncertain road ahead. Their conversations were tinged with cautious hope, as they considered what a future together might look like. They understood the risks, his entanglements, her history, but the emotional bond between them had grown stronger with each passing day. Rather than retreat, they leaned into the connection, choosing to shield their growing love from outside interference. Carly, often hardened by years of heartbreak, found herself daring to imagine a life not dictated by the expectations of others but shaped by her own desires, and Brennan, ever composed, welcomed that vision. Meanwhile, Josslyn found herself walking a dangerous tightrope as her dual life began to close in around her. As a trainee with the WSB, she was held to a strict code of secrecy, one that Vaughn had recently drilled into her with unforgiving clarity. But it was Brennan who delivered the next blow, reminding Josslyn with a measured yet sharp warning that the consequences of slipping up could be catastrophic. The weight of those words settled heavily on her shoulders, forcing her to confront the reality of the path she had chosen. Though fiercely independent, Josslyn realized she wasn't just protecting herself anymore, she was safeguarding secrets that, if revealed, could endanger everyone she cared about. Third, Tracy's instincts rarely failed her, and this time was no different. The moment she sat down with Brooke Lynn, she sensed something was off. Lois's sudden return to Bensonhurst had left behind an uncomfortable silence, and Tracy could feel the emotional residue clinging to her granddaughter like a storm that hadn't fully passed. With sharp precision, Tracy began to question Brooke Lynn, not out of malice, but out of a need to protect the family legacy and understand the truth. Brooke Lynn, however, struggled to maintain her composure. Each carefully worded inquiry from Tracy chipped away at her defenses, and the guilt she carried became more difficult to mask. Something deeper was unraveling beneath the surface, and Tracy wasn't going to rest until she uncovered it. Meanwhile, Ned, ever the peacemaker, launched a new plan in hopes of repairing the rift between Lois and Brooke Lynn. Believing that the strain between mother and daughter was merely the result of clashing personalities and unresolved arguments, Ned worked diligently on a family gathering that he hoped would serve as a fresh start. He had no idea that the true reason behind Lois's departure ran much deeper. The warm intentions behind his strategy masked a growing concern, a suspicion that he didn't yet understand the full picture. The thought had crossed his mind that something might be hidden, something involving a child and the possibility of adoption. Though he hadn't voiced these doubts aloud, the idea lingered, quietly driving his determination to bring his family back together before the truth exploded on its own terms. Elsewhere, Lulu found herself caught in the web of her own secrets. Since regaining consciousness and returning to a semblance of normal life, she had carried a burden that grew heavier with each passing day. Though Dante remained unaware of the truth, Lulu knew she couldn't shoulder it alone. In a moment of vulnerability, she turned to Maxie, whose loyalty and empathy made her the only person Lulu could trust. With trembling hesitation, Lulu revealed just enough for Maxie to understand: there was a child, and it was connected to a chapter of Lulu's life she had yet to confront. While Lulu didn't divulge every detail, the weight of her confession hinted at consequences that could ripple through more than one family. Maxie, stunned but supportive, now held a secret that could change everything. Fourth, Ezra had always carried himself with a calm, enigmatic demeanor, but during a tense exchange with Laura, his mask finally cracked. What began as a civil conversation quickly spiraled into a confrontation that left Laura visibly furious. His words, carefully laced with condescension and veiled implications, struck a nerve in the seasoned mayor. Laura, usually composed in moments of conflict, found herself uncharacteristically rattled by Ezra's cryptic remarks and the subtle threats hidden within them. Whatever his intentions were, it became clear that Ezra was playing a long game, one that involved manipulating trust and disrupting alliances, starting with Laura's. At the same time, the simmering tension between Christina and Ava reached a boiling point. Christina, already under emotional strain, grew increasingly agitated by Ava's presence and influence in her orbit. Ava, sharp and unbothered, took every opportunity to assert control, twisting conversations to her favor and seizing every advantage. When the moment presented itself, Ava delivered a pointed threat, laced with the kind of cool cruelty only she could wield. But Christina, feeling pushed too far and desperate to reclaim power in a situation slipping through her fingers, decided to take matters into her own hands. What she did next was impulsive and dangerously bold, a choice driven by emotion rather than logic. The consequences of that choice came quickly. As the adrenaline faded, Christina was forced to confront the gravity of her actions. What she had hoped would assert her independence instead left her shaken, uncertain, and deeply regretful. She had crossed a line she couldn't erase, and in doing so, may have placed Ava in real danger. Whether intentional or not, Christina's bold move set off a chain reaction that could spiral into something far more dangerous than she anticipated. Now, all she could do was wait, and wonder if Ava would retaliate, or if the damage was already irreversible. Fifth, Jason found himself pacing more than usual, unable to shake the growing sense of unease that crept into his every thought. While he tried to focus on pressing matters, his mind kept drifting back to Carly in the dangerous path she seemed to be heading down with Brennan. Their bond was intensifying in ways Jason couldn't ignore, and though he had always trusted Carly to make her own choices, something about Brennan didn't sit right. Whether it was instinct or something more tangible, Jason felt a quiet urgency building within him, a warning that something was about to slip beyond his control, and it would come at a cost he wasn't ready to face. Meanwhile, Elizabeth was caught off guard when Lucky unexpectedly returned to Port Charles with a glimmer of warmth in his eyes and a carefully planned surprise. It had been years since they shared anything beyond co-parenting and polite conversations, but this time felt different. Lucky's gesture was thoughtful, laced with nostalgia and quiet hope, stirring memories Elizabeth had long buried beneath responsibility and routine. As they stood together under the soft glow of familiarity, it became clear that Lucky's intentions ran deeper than a simple visit. Whether she was ready to reopen that part of her heart or not, the choice was slowly presenting itself in the form of something unmistakably romantic. Across town, Emma was facing her own battle, one that pushed her to extremes she hadn't anticipated. Thrust into a situation that left her feeling cornered and powerless, she made a bold and risky move, one that threatened to spiral beyond her control. Her usually calm demeanor gave way to desperation, and just when it seemed like things might take a darker turn, Gio stepped in. His timing was impeccable, and his presence grounded her in the moment. As he pulled her from the chaos she'd stumbled into, Emma realized how fragile everything had become, how one reckless choice could unravel everything. Though she tried to hide her fear, Gio saw through the facade, and in that moment, a new layer of trust quietly formed between them. Sixth, when Felicia approached Sasha with what seemed like a casual question, it quickly became apparent that there was more beneath the surface. Felicia, sharp and observant as ever, had noticed a sudden change in Sasha's financial circumstances, a new air of security, a confidence in her step, and whispers of a sizable savings account that hadn't existed weeks earlier. Sasha, caught off guard, hesitated for a moment too long before offering a vague explanation. That hesitation, that flicker of uncertainty, was all it took for Felicia's instincts to kick in. Something wasn't adding up, and the more Sasha tried to gloss over the truth, the more Felicia began to dig deeper with carefully phrased follow-up questions. As the conversation continued, Felicia's curiosity became concern. She had seen too many people fall into traps dressed as opportunities, and Sasha's evasive answers only heightened her suspicions. The mention, however accidental, of Jen Sidwell raised immediate red flags. Felicia recognized the name, and it wasn't associated with anything clean or trustworthy. The realization that Sasha might have made some kind of deal with him stirred a quiet alarm within her. Whether it was financial desperation or misplaced trust, Felicia couldn't ignore the warning signs. She knew that any agreement with someone like Jen's came with strings, and often consequences that reached far beyond the original intent. Sasha, now realizing the weight of what she had unintentionally revealed, grew tense under Felicia's concerned gaze. Though she tried to assure her that everything was under control, her voice betrayed the uncertainty she felt inside. The deal with Jen's had offered her a lifeline when she needed it most, but now it felt like a ticking clock hidden beneath her renewed stability. Felicia, unwilling to let the matter rest, left the conversation with quiet resolve. She wouldn't confront Sasha directly, at least not yet, but she would start asking questions in the background. If Jen Sidwell posed a threat to Sasha's future, Felicia intended to find out, and to stop him before it was too late. Finally, during the week of March 31st to April 4th, fans will witness a significant shift in the mystery surrounding Marco, whose quiet demeanor has masked far more than he's let on. His unexpected visit to Windmere will raise eyebrows, particularly when new information suggests that Marco may be the secret son of the elusive Jen Sidwell and the sophisticated Natalia Ramirez. The revelation promises to shake the foundations of Windmere's corridors, as ties to the Sidwell name have long been associated with secrecy, manipulation, and danger. Marco's presence there will no longer seem like a coincidence but rather a deliberate step into a legacy tangled with dark ambition. Lucas, having slowly opened his heart again, finds himself falling for Marco's charm and intensity. After years of heartbreak and guarded optimism, Lucas believed he'd finally met someone who offered a sense of honesty and connection. But as the puzzle pieces around Marco's past begin to surface, questions follow. Can Lucas truly trust the man who's slipped so easily into his life? While his instincts whisper doubt, his heart urges him to believe. Still, the shadow of Marco's lineage looms, and with each tender moment they share, Lucas begins to feel the weight of secrets that have yet to come to light. Sensing the shift, Brad steps into the picture with his usual blend of sarcasm and suspicion, but this time, his concern runs deeper. Despite his complicated past with Lucas, Brad's protective instincts flare the moment he hears whispers of Marco's connection to the Sidwells. He quietly begins observing Marco, picking up on small behaviors, slips of language, and expressions that don't quite match the story Marco presents. What he uncovers leads to troubling suspicions about Marco's true intentions. Brad, determined not to let Lucas fall into another destructive relationship, prepares to confront the situation, knowing full well that unmasking Marco could cause emotional fallout none of them are ready for. Elsewhere in Port Charles, Sonny continues to ignore the warnings surrounding his heart condition, brushing off episodes of discomfort as stress or exhaustion. With the chaos surrounding his business and family, he refuses to slow down, convinced that vulnerability is a luxury he can't afford. However, pushing his health aside doesn't come without a price. The pressure is mounting, and the longer Sonny pretends everything is fine, the closer he moves toward a breaking point. How long he can outrun the consequences remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: time and denial are no longer on his side.